Formula One megastar and leader for the World Driving Championship until a run of bad manners and bad luck put his title hopes in jeopardy. But he remains the man to beat.
He was, in my opinion, mighty the whole season, and I think that there's no man that deserves to win the championship apart from him.
Don't tell that to Damon Hill, the Englishman who is second in the title chase with a chance to close within a point.
Essential we try and get 10 points in Portugal and get ourselves back on par for when Michael returns.
ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha, along with Derek Daly. Welcome to the land of humble fishermen and globe-trotting jet-setters, Estoril, Portugal, home of the Portuguese Grand Prix. Once again, World Championship leader Michael Schumacher will not race today as he sits out the second of his two-race suspension. He came into this race with an 11-point lead over Damon Hill. A victory and the 10 points that go with it will bring Hill within one of Schumacher with 3 races yet to run. Here's how Michael Schumacher's nightmare has unfolded. A 37-point lead at the French Grand Prix, race number 7. After round 10 at Hungary, it was down to 31. Disqualification at Belgium brought it down to 21. And when Damon Hill won the Italian Grand Prix 2 weeks ago at Monza, it was down to 11. Derek Daly, we have another new racetrack configuration.
And personally, one of my favorite Grand Prix tracks that Formula One cars race on. It's slow, it's fast, it's difficult, just like Grand Prix tracks should be. Was originally 11 corners, now it's all changed. Now it's 13 because of this new addition, turn 9 and 10, which is a first-gear hairpin, not liked by many drivers. In fact, caused one of the biggest crashes seen here at Estoril since Patrese backward flip.
And that 13th corner has been renamed this weekend. Is it officially the Senna turn? We'll be back in a moment with the starting lineup for the Grand Prix of Portugal. Stay with us. This ESPN Speed World presentation is brought to you by Mazda. Back in Portugal, Mika Hakkinen sits on the starting grid on a raw, blustery day. The field is rolling off. Let's check out the starting grid with our Yamaha starting lineup. On the pole, Gerhard Berger of Austria in the Ferrari with a lap at 120.7 mile per hour average. Next to him, Damon Hill after a flip on Friday when he tangled with Eddie Irvine, but he says he's ready to go in the Williams Renault. On row 2, David Coulthard in his last race for the team before Nigel Mansell takes over, equaling his best qualifying performance. Next to him, Mika Hakkinen of Finland in the McLaren, third quickest in the morning warm-up after Coulthard and Hill. On row 3 will be Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. Next to him, Ukio Katayama of Japan in the Tyrrell Yamaha. Row 4 will be Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the McLaren Peugeot. The man next to him wants his McLaren seat, Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan Hart. Row 5 will be Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany in the Sauber Mercedes. Next to the Benetton of the only Dutchman ever to stand on a Formula One podium, Jos Verstappen. Row 6, Christian Fittipaldi, eyeing an IndyCar drive, we are told. He'll be in the Footwork Ford. Next to him, Mark Blundell of Great Britain in the Tyrrell Yamaha. Row 7 will be our ESPN colleague Eddie Irvine of Northern Ireland in the Jordan Hart. Next to him, J.J. Leto of Finland, still struggling as he tries to replace Michael Schumacher in the Benetton. Row 8 will be Olivier Penny of France in the Ligier. Next to the footwork of Gianni Morbidelli of Italy, who's worried about having enough tires for this race after brake problems in the practice and qualifying. Row 9 will be Andrea De Cesaris of Italy in the Sauber. Next to the Minardi of Pierluigi Martini. Michele Alboreto and Johnny Herbert will be on row 10. Row 11, Eric Bernard and Eric Comas. Row 12, Yannick Dalmas of France and David Brabham of Australia. And row 13, Philippe Adams of Belgium returns to the Lotus team. He'll be starting next to the Simtech of Jean-Marc Gugnon. Once again, the Pacific Gilmore machines of Bertrand Gachot and Paul Belmondo did not qualify. You watch the cars warming tires and engines on the racetrack. Here's a look at our race conditions. It is a fairly cool day. A wind that has been gusting in the drivers' faces as they make their way up the long front straightaway. Look at that humidity, 78%, and quite a good chance of rain despite the official figure of 40%. The skies are quite gray overhead. Now, Derek Daly, let's talk a little bit about this race.
This racetrack is one of the best. The start line is a long run to a very fast and very bumpy right-hander, and it only gets faster from there. Turn 2 is blindingly fast, above 155 miles an hour. But how quick will these Ferraris be? There's somebody slow on the right side of the grid.
Katayama in the Tyrrell. That is the pit entrance, but as you can see, the car is not moving, and that's a tremendous problem for him as the field on the left continues to pull into position. This is the bridge that Ricardo Patrese nearly tagged when he flipped into the air a couple of years ago in this race. Now you see the field forming up, but the yellow flags wave. Cars sticking to the left, the racing line only pulling to the right onto the dirty part of the starting grid when they absolutely have to.
The two Williams cars quickest in the warm-up. The drag to turn 1 will be most important for this Ferrari.
It is a very, very fast first corner complex here at Portugal. We will start without Katayama, it appears. The lights are up, they are red, and we're ready to go. Watch the middle of the pack. One of the Saubers, Frentzen, jinks to the middle of the racetrack. He's going to try to go up the inside. Down to the first corner. It is the Ferrari out front. Jean Alesi made a beautiful start. He has only his teammate and the two Williams cars in front of him. But Mika Hakkinen is all over him as they go through turn 2.
David Coulthard made a spectacular start. He's running second. He was the fastest man in the warm-up.
Martin Brundle right there trying to move up around Jos Verstappen.
Up the hill, second gear left-hander, 55 miles an hour. Then the blast up to 185.
Onto the front straight, the back straightaway with a bit of a kink in it. The field now beginning to stream out. You see all that rough area to the right side of the racetrack. That's part of the reason they cannot extend the runoff area in some of these corners. It's a very rocky racetrack. There is Katayama still parked in the pit lane, and now he gets a push start and he's on his way, but obviously well behind the pack. Martin Brundle goes down the inside of Verstappen as they go momentarily 3 wide.
And Verstappen blocked him down to the inside to make sure Brundle did not have a clear run to that braking zone.
Now back on the old racetrack, off of the new section. Quick flicks right and left here, and then into this long, long right-hander, the 13th corner, now named the Senna Curve, in honor of the late 3-time world champion.
So Berger gets the run. Off the last turn, this is the blast, 190 miles an hour down this long front straight. He's looking in his mirrors to see where Coulthard is.
Gerhard Berger has had so many great moments and a few fraught moments at this racetrack. Recall last year when his active suspension failed as he left the pit area. He shot across the racetrack into the fence, right across the bows of Derek Warwick in the footwork. But Gerhard Berger has also won here in a Ferrari back in 1987. Now another look at the start once again.
And David Coulthard got a blinder of a start. Look at, he's on the outside, clears Damon Hill and turns to the apex, with Alesi just filtering in down behind Damon Hill. Look at them moving from the Bennett, or from the McLaren.
Spare a thought for David Coulthard, who runs second right now. This is his last race for the Williams-Renault team before Nigel Mansell takes over. He obviously wants to do well, but his teammate Damon Hill needs those 10 points for his world championship aspirations. Off of the new section of track, back onto the old.
Here it is here. It's uphill. It's all the way down to first gear. Berger said his car was not good here. Look, all the way to the left, all the way right, then you blast. Boy, he gets wheel spin. See those black tire marks exiting in first, second, and third gear.
You see the cars on the new section in the background. That's why tires are a concern this weekend, because they are getting a lot of wheel spin. They're using the B compound Goodyears, the second hardest compound the company makes for these cars, and they are worried about going through their allotment of 7 sets. Off of that fast final corner, they gear change twice in that corner, upshifting to launch onto the front straightaway, and up, as Derek mentioned, well over 190 miles an hour.
On close-up shots, look closely at the Ferrari, at the side fences down the sides. They have 8 side fences, 4 each side, trying to guide the air down the side of the car, underneath, trying to create the downforce that was taken away by the smaller front and rear wings.
We apologize for the lack of ambient sound, the roar of these Formula One engines that is such a delight to race fans around the world. We'll try to cure that technical problem. Meanwhile, there is David Coulthard, and Damon Hill is right with him, appears maybe to be the faster of the two Williams teammates right now.
Coulthard, who gets faster with every race, began to lose the Ferrari. Now he closes up. Starting off the old circuit. Here it is, first gear hairpin. See, it's uphill, all the way left, all the way right, uphill again. And then you join the old racetrack right here.
It was the driver's request that those changes be made, but they are almost unanimously disfavored by the drivers this weekend. They're not happy with the money spent here at Portugal. We'll be back in just a moment. For the Grand Prix of Portugal, there you see the running order, and we have Formula One back at full song. There is David Coulthard. Just as I finished saying Damon Hill appears to be the quicker of the two cars, Coulthard goes and sets fastest lap of the race thus far. It is Berger, Coulthard, Hill, Alesi, Mika Hakkinen, Rubens Barrichello, then Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Jasper Stappen, Martin Brundle, and Christian Fittipaldi rounding out the top 10.
Remember that Berger looked good because he was on the pole. He set that time on Friday, and he has been in trouble with the handling of this Ferrari ever since. Yesterday, both sessions, the practice and qualifying, he tried to iron out the unstable high-speed handling of the Ferrari and never got it worked out. And now you see, as this race settles down, the two Williams boys, particularly David Coulthard, begins to turn the heat up on Berger.
The teams are saying they're planning 2 stops, which means they can run a fairly light fuel load, and that helps explain the extra speed in some of the cars. That leaves the door open for some team to go with a one-stop strategy that may save the pit time and allow them to steal the race. Gerhard Berger definitely looks darty. The car's not handling well at all.
Understeer on the low speed and high speed instability. He fears that the low speed understeer will wear out these front tires much quicker than he wants to. But David Coulthard and Damon Hill are definitely now much closer to Berger.
Now, we mentioned during qualifying, Damon Hill had a scary moment when he collided with Eddie Irvine. Let's take a look at what happened to Hill in car number 0.
He gets launched to the back of Irvine's car. Now watch what happens here. Watch his left hand in the cockpit. He puts it up right there. We think he closes his visor, but watch how he buries his head in the gravel pit. There's the wood plank on the bottom of the Williams that has caused so much controversy this year. Literally just bolts onto the bottom to raise the ride heights 10 millimeter thick. But Damon Hill is in this car today. It was only superficial damage, but watch what happens with the in-car camera. All the way upside down until eventually the camera breaks.
There you see Hill talking it over with his new race engineer, David Brown, who also engineered Nigel Mansell, and Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna. John Russell was Damon Hill's engineer, but recently Hill asked for David Brown's services. At first, it wasn't given to him. And of course, he had to go back to John Russell and explain why he didn't want him to be his engineer. But now David Brown is engineering Damon Hill's car. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Nigel Mansell comes back to the series for the Grand Prix of Europe in Jerez, Spain. He might want his old man Brown back again.
The difference in experience here in the first two cars. 160 Grand Prix starts for Berger and 8 for David Coulthard. What an impression he is making on this Williams team, 23 years of age.
If you get a close look at Coulthard's helmet, on the right side of it, there's a long length of tubing that is actually coiled at his right ear. Any clues to what that is, Derek?
It is a gravity-feed drink bottle. The reason they roll the coils up on the right side is so it's under heavy braking. The fluid from the drink bottle doesn't shoot out and give him more than he wants under braking. Because actually, I've had that happen. When it squirts out under braking, it actually splatters the inside of your windshield as we take a closer look at Jean Alesi. Frustration with this man. Look at this up over the curve. That is a 5th gear, 165-mile-an-hour right-hander, and he doesn't mind throwing the Ferrari up on the curve.
That is a corner that the Grand Prix Drivers Association is especially concerned about. But Damon Hill said there's a huge drop-off after it. They would need a mountain of fill dirt in order to move that fence back. The drivers are asking that it happen, but they're willing to be patient until it does. There have been huge accidents at that corner because the Armco is right at the edge of the curbing. There you see the gap from Berger back to his Ferrari teammate Alesi in 4th place, following his retirement from the Grand Prix of Italy. And Berger has stopped. The race leader is out.
How quickly things change. Under pressure, but still leading. And a Ferrari yet again. Alesi blew big time in yesterday's qualifying session, blew one of the V12s. I don't see any smoke from this. But the Williams boys, no, now they're commanding lead. Now the race begins to fall into Damon Hill's hands, because remember, Coulthard will be in a supporting role if necessary. We almost got a quick glance of Berger as he slowed down, and then our host broadcaster just cut away.
I was mentioning Alesi. We all watched here on ESPN. He got out of the car in a towering rage. He had taken pole. He was leading the race as you watch Berger, but the car would not engage first gear in the pits. And the Ferrari gearbox is such that if it doesn't get first, it won't get any other gears either. Now here's a look from Coulthard's car ahead to Berger. Let's see if we can see what happened.
The off-camber right-hander, all we saw that was an indication was a drop of something hit David Coulthard's onboard camera. There he is off on the right-hand side. It's the off-camber right-hander right before this brand new section here. Great in-car shot here. Great in-car camera shots there. David Coulthard has led the last 3 Grand Prix races, but second place on the roster finish at Monza, truly taken from his grasp when he ran out of fuel.
But David Coulthard insists he does have options for the last 3 races of the year. We could see David Coulthard in someone else's car, and everyone's having fun speculating this weekend as to who those teams might be. There is Jean Alesi, the only Ferrari remaining in the race. He runs in 3rd spot. We'll be back to Portugal for more of the Grand Prix in just a moment. Welcome back in Portugal, working lap 14 of 71. Due to time constraints, we're compressing the race just a bit, but we won't let you miss any of the action. David Coulthard leads as you watch Mika Hakkinen of Finland in the McLaren Peugeot. The running order is Coulthard, pulling away by a fraction of a second every lap from his Williams teammate Damon Hill in 2nd, followed by Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, then this man, Hakkinen, then Rubens Barrichello in 5th, and in 6th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany. Jasper Verstappen, Martin Brundle, Christian Fittipaldi, and Mark Blundell round out the top 10. Then Eddie Irvine, Olivier Panis, J.J. Leto, Johnny Herbert, Eric Bernard, and Gianni Morbidelli.
Spectacular debut last year in the McLaren by Mika Hakkinen when he took over from Michael Andretti. Look at the round black ring on that right side tire of Hakkinen's car. I'm not saying that's trouble, but when you begin to get those dark rings on tires, very often that can begin to spell trouble. But Hakkinen last year all over the curbs, not as wild this year. Remember, he out-qualified Senna last year on his debut here for McLaren. From
Portuguese television, here's a look at, I believe that's Jean-Marc Gugnon spinning away in his MTV Simtech car.
And manages to get away with it. Sometimes, if you have enough racetrack on the outside, you can do the 180.
Is there puffs, smoke from the Peugeot? Ron Dennis said this weekend that it will be a McLaren Peugeot in 1995, but there are desperate signs of smoke from the back of that Mika Hakkinen car.
And I don't think he knows it yet, because he's still on the racing line, still going through the curbing. If we get a shot of the exit here onto the front straight, you'll see the new curb on the outside. That's it right there. That was the curb that's been lowered. Last year, remember, it was very high, and that was the one that caught out Mika Hakkinen and sent him crashing into the inside guardrail. David Brabham's in.
You see the extra winglets just on the inside of the big rear wing. All of the teams adding those in an effort to deal with the aerodynamic changes to the cars this year, mandated by the governing body. You ride with David Coulthard, the race leader.
That was a surprise visit by Brabham to the Simtech pit, because they were not ready. They still had the tire warmer blankets on those tires, but listen to that audio.
past the disabled Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. A broken gearbox is the word from the pits. Pierluigi Martini has made a long pit stop in the Minardi. They're using a new semi-automatic gearbox this weekend, leaving the Simtech team as the only cars in the race with the old sequential manual gearboxes. Everyone else has semi-automatic boxes.
Traffic already, and as long as David Coulthard is leaving Damon Hill behind with speed on the racetrack, there will be no team orders until this race runs a lot more of the laps, because remember, anything could happen to Damon Hill, and if that does happen, Coulthard needs as big a lead as he can get, so there is no need to invoke team orders at the moment. But David Coulthard is spectacular. He was half a second faster than everybody else in the warm-up, and the faster this man runs, the more difficult it will be, I think, for Nigel Mansell to convince this team that he should be replaced.
So you see it as a possibility that Mansell might not come to the team if Coulthard continues to impress?
Well, he gets more impressive by the race. I can't imagine that Frank Williams, as one of the LaRousse cars is about to be lapped, I can't imagine Frank Williams is not as impressed with this man who will only get better. 8 races is all he has under his belt.
This is the new section of the racetrack. Tall uphill left-hander, taller uphill right-hander. Over the top, highest point of the racetrack now, and then they begin to plunge down just a bit. Another man impressed with David Coulthard's performance, Patrick Head, a minority owner in the Williams-Renault team and its technical director. He is quite upfront about it. He wants Coulthard to stay in the car. We have a pit stop coming up now. Coulthard heads for the pit. Patrick Head has said that Nigel Mansell coming back to the team is a confection dreamed up by Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone.
Surprising that our leader is in so early. They have started on a light fuel load. 10 seconds, not the quickest stop we've seen in F1. That will give Damon Hill a clear lead, and now we'll watch for Damon Hill's pit stop and how long it takes him.
That stop on lap number 17 of 71, so it'll definitely be at least a 2-stop race for David Coulthard.
So it drops all the way down the order, comes out behind Philippe Adams. In the Lotus, the struggling Lotus team, people hope it will survive. Adams sees him move to the right side.
The Lotus team, Formula One fans may know, went into receivership in England. The team is now being run by a pair of court-ordered administrators due to debts of more than $10 million US, much of it to the Cosworth factory for Ford engines used in 1992 and 93. Here's Gianni Morbidelli in the footwork for a stop. On the subject of the Lotus team, the administrators say the team will continue, but they're due back in court in October before the final 2 races of the year to demonstrate how they plan to manage their finances and become profitable again.
One thing the administrators are aware of, the drivers' contracts are worth money, and Damon Hill rolls down. Let's see the stopwatch and see where Damon Hill is on the racetrack, or see where David Coulthard is.
16, 17 men out there working on the car. Ooh, not an elegant pit exit, but it works as the McLaren team gets ready.
Where's Coulthard? This is where he'll appear.
We need a wider shot from our Portuguese television hosts. Turns 1 and 2, still not quite up to speed. Up the hill, up through the gearbox, onto the back straightaway.
So Jean Alesi now leads as we watch Blundell make a stop on the Tyrrell. Alesi leads, he hasn't made a pit stop. David Coulthard, we believe, I think that was him at the corner of our picture. I think he is now in second, so no real changes in the Williams running order after those pit stops. Upside down on the gravel trap, Damon Hill Hill. He was color front page in all the British newspapers after Friday. Death-defying antics by Damon Hill. They do dramatize everything in the newspapers over there. Of course, they follow his every move with this battle for the championship. Look how unstable that Ferrari looks in the braking zone. That is very bumpy. Here's the curbing that he ran over earlier, and he runs over it again.
To finish my story about John Alesi, who got out of his car in Monza in such a rage, he then got into his street Ferrari with his brother Jose to drive back to his home in Monte Carlo. And Alesi admitted a little sheepishly this weekend, yes, Jose was very upset with the speed I was driving. Alesi blistered the highway back to Monaco as you watch a Benetton pit stop. Bouncing back down. Very quick stuff. 6.3 seconds. How's that possible? Unless it's another light fuel load.
6.3. That is the quickest that I have seen for a long, long time.
A third of the way through the race, roughly. Alesi still has not pitted, so he may be trying to opt for a one-stop strategy. Oh, he just paused at the top of that rise there a little bit, as though he were having trouble finding a gear.
The Ferrari pit are ready for Alesi. This is the long 180-degree right-hander leading down to the front straight. He's all the way to the curbs. Does he peel off? No. He still wants to lead the race. Look at Hakkinen all over the curb behind him. And there's Barrichello closing in on the McLaren.
He made the point. It was that curb that got Hakkinen last year. He was running very well in his first appearance for the McLaren team, sitting in for Michael Andretti. Hit that curb, spun across the racetrack, tore the car to smithereens. Yet, it doesn't keep him off those curbs again this year here in Estoril. We'll take a quick timeout and return for more of the action from round number 13 of the Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of Portugal. Stay with us. Back at the Grand Prix of Portugal, Bob Varsha, Derek Daly with you. This is Jean Alesi, the race leader, making his pit stop for Ferrari.
Managed to get it into first gear. Hakkinen, you can see, was in right behind him. Barrichello has not come in yet, so the Jordan leads the Grand Prix here in Portugal.
I believe Hakkinen pitted first, and the Ferrari team managed to outdo their McLaren rivals. I tell you, the Ferrari mechanics have a lot to make up for this weekend. They earned their team a $50,000 fine due to a reported scuffle with track security here in Portugal. Apparently they came upon a door that they found to be locked. They didn't want it to be, so they decided they'd try to open it by beating on it. And an ugly scene ensued. It has cost them a $50,000 fine as you watch Eddie Irvine make his pit stop and back out.
Ferrari were so incensed by the fine that they actually threatened this morning to pull their cars from the race and go back to Maranello. Then sanity prevailed. They decided to say, but again, you see those side fences down the side of the Ferrari, 4 on each side to direct the air around the side and underneath. Look how slow that first gear, right, left, uphill section is. Originally put in there for the Grand Prix bikes a couple of years ago. Now they decided to use it for the cars.
Well, bet those super bikes are magic around a series of corners like that. The cars are a little bit more awkward. Onto the front straightaway through the shimmering heat. Jean Alesi, the running order right now. Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the lead in his Jordan. Jean Alesi right there runs second. Then David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Damon Hill, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Sauber in the 6th and final points-paying position. Barrichello is very much the man of the hour in Portugal this weekend as you watch one of the Benettons pull in for a stop. Barrichello is reportedly pushing Ron Dennis from the McLaren team to make a decision about whether Dennis will buy out Barrichello's contract with Eddie Jordan. That seemed like a much more likely possibility a week or so ago as you watch Eddie Irvine on the racetrack, when the Ford Cosworth people apparently approached Eddie Jordan and said, if you keep Barrichello, you may get our ZTEC R V8 engine program.
And then, as they continue to watch Eddie Irvine, Barrichello is beginning to put the squeeze onto McLaren, saying, give me a decision if you're interested in me, or I'm going to be forced to make a decision myself. And stay with Jordan, who believes that the Ford Z-Tech R8, the packaging of that engine with his car, can be just as fast as the Benetton-Michael Schumacher combination.
Ron Dennis, for his part, is talking to Michael Schumacher. Now, there were a lot of reports in the press this week that Schumacher will be back with Benetton for 1995. Schumacher this weekend told the German press that's only 99% certain. It is not a done deal yet. Schumacher had a 1996 option that he had signed, but now we are told in exchange for tearing up that option, he may stay with the team for 1995. There you see the running order, courtesy of the World Graphics. Christian Fittipaldi up in 7th, having a good run. Olivier Perny, Verstappen after his pit stop is back. Martin Brundle back in 10th spot. I'm not sure whether he has stopped or not. Leto has stopped. And Andre de Cesaris runs in 12th in the Sauber Mercedes.
Glory time here for Barrichello, leading a Grand Prix. He's already had a pole position at Spa. Unusual circumstances, but that doesn't make any difference. The record book shows he was on the pole, but does himself a tremendous amount of good. I think the key, oh, here he goes, peels off into the pit lane. David Coulthard was only 4 seconds behind, so he and Damon Hill will move back up to first and second, and Barrichello needs a nice, clean pit stop here from the Jordan crew.
Just 22 years of age, the youngest man in Formula One.
Look at the number of people that swarm around these cars. 7 seconds, 7.8. Good job by the Jordan team.
And that would put David Coulthard unofficially back into the race lead. So the pit stops continue to scramble the order after 25 of 71 laps.
See Damon Hill now closer than ever because Coulthard is in the traffic. Coulthard needs to be careful. He can now move the traffic aside for Damon Hill.
Now let's take a look at our Haviland mid-race recap. The race leader was Jean Alesi. It is now David Coulthard taking over. Coulthard has fastest lap in the race, and this being a new racetrack, it could be a lap record. Whoever has it at the end of the race will have that record. Gerhard Berger, remarkably, the only car out of the race at this point after losing the gearbox in his Ferrari. This is Philippe Adams in the Lotus, taking care to get back out on the racetrack gently. Only his second race in the car. The first came in his native Belgium, where he crashed out of the race.
Coulthard now pulls out the pass of the LaRousse car. He needs some clear road to begin to see on this set of tires. Does he still have the combination of talent and speed in that car to pull away from Damon Hill?
Well, that first corner complex, turns 1 and 2, is a perfect place to stand to see Formula One cars at their most majestic. Absolutely glued to the racetrack as they rocket around there, shifting up a gear at 140 miles an hour.
All the way down to third gear. Third gear, 68 miles an hour they went through here in qualifying. A blast down the hill. Now here's a difficult off-camber right-hander. Oh, he didn't squeeze past Eric Bernard.
Look at those dark clouds overhead. That's Eric Comas. Oh, and he's off onto the marbles. Look at all the gravel on the outside. David Coulthard caught out there and passed by his teammate Damon Hill.
Gets caught in traffic. Why the traffic doesn't move aside to let the leaders by, I don't know, but gets caught in traffic, goes a little bit wide. Long, fourth, fifth gear right-hander. Now we'll see a race. Now we'll see who's quicker.
Here's Coulthard going around one of the Lotus cars. Not sure exactly what Portuguese television wanted to show us there, but there it was in all of its glory.
That was Comas in that LaRousse. Ooh, tight squeeze right-hander. Philippe Adams staying just about wide enough, but now Damon Hill has to cope with the traffic.
Needing 10 points to make it a one-point World Driving Championship fight with 3 races to go in Jerez, Spain, in Suzuka, Japan, and in Adelaide, Australia. We'll have all of them for you here on ESPN.
lap into the pits anyway. The Minardi waves Damon Hill by, and the Tyrrell is out. Who is it?
That's Katayama's car. Oh, what a day. The Japanese driver continues to impress in Formula One, but the car let him down on the pace lap. And now, after fighting his way up and threatening to break into the top 12, it appears his race is over. And one of the LaRousse cars is being pushed into the garage. That is car number 20 for Eric Comas, who we saw just a moment ago involved in that midfield tangle that allowed Damon Hill to pass his teammate David Coulthard and move into the race lead. There is Hill in the foreground in car number 0, now comfortably out front with a chance to pick up 10 precious World Championship points. We'll take a quick timeout and return to Portugal for more of the Grand Prix in just a moment. Bob Barsha, Derek Daly with you. We now have 35 laps complete. Damon Hill leads. David Coulthard runs second, followed by John Alesi and Mika Hakkinen. There is Alesi running in third right now with about a 2.5-second gap over the McLaren of Hakkinen, who is doing everything in his power to close it up.
His driving style is so different from that of his teammate Gerhard Berger. Very seldom they go to the line with similar setups. So flamboyant, leans ahead, spins the wheels, jumps the brakes, smokes the wheels. We've seen him smoke that inside wheel as Yannick Dalmas goes into the wrong pit, then drives slowly up to his own pit.
Well, this is only his second race, so I suppose it's somewhat understandable. Meanwhile, hard news for the Sauber team, another financially troubled operation. Owner Peter Sauber, as you watch Christian Fittipaldi in the pits, Peter Sauber wasn't even at the Grand Prix of Italy. He was out searching for sponsorship that the Mercedes people have apparently told him he must have if Mercedes is going to continue to support the team with engines and technology. Frentzen had been running as high as 4th in this race following a terrific pit stop, but he is now out. There's Christian Fittipaldi heading back out. Fittipaldi has been mentioned as a possible successor to Rubens Barrichello at Jordan if Barrichello leaves.
4 days testing Ferrari did in Barcelona. He waves to the pit crew, whatever that was, to acknowledge a pit sign. 4 days they tried aerodynamic pieces, new floors, new suspension. They ended up starting here with a revised front suspension. They say the car gets faster, it gets better, but the main advantage this car has is speed down the straight. Again this weekend, the fastest car at over 190 miles an hour is Barrichello. Jerks the car down inside Martini.
Let's take another look at the pass by which Damon Hill took the lead from his teammate David Coulthard. I thought for a moment that perhaps Coulthard had pulled aside, but he wouldn't do that in a corner.
And he's trapped behind the LaRousse, gets wide over the gravel. And when that happens, you got to just wait it out and wait till the car loses enough speed, get off those stones in the gravel. And of course, meantime, Damon Hill takes full advantage of diving to the apex, and now he controls it.
See Martin Brundle running in 7th position. 2 McLarens made the points in the most recent race at Monza. There is Andre de Cesaris and the other Sauber. The McLaren is coming on with those Peugeot engines, and if Brundle can break into the points, they'll be in great shape here in Portugal.
And de Cesaris openly still admits to his frustration at not being able to match the pace of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. He said he just cannot seem to get the rhythm necessary to drive these very nervous Formula One cars. The entry point is so high, de Cesaris just cannot quite match that Frentzen speed, and it frustrates him.
Rubens Barrichello, turns 1 and 2.
Eddie Jordan said this week that Eddie Irvine does seem to have the pace of a Barrichello, but he has yet to prove that he has the pace in race conditions. You need to have that pace and maintain it under pressure all through the races also. Barrichello has done it and proven it. Eddie Irvine has not yet proven that he can do that.
And the cars out of the race. We mentioned Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Eric Comas. We saw his LaRousse pushed into the garage. Yukio Katayama pushed off the racetrack, and Gerhard Berger, who lost his gearbox. But only 4 cars out of the race, a remarkable lack of attrition being halfway through a Grand Prix. The order is Hill, Coulthard, Alesi, Hakkinen, Barrichello, Verstappen, Brundle, Blundell, Olivier Panis, and Eddie Irvine, your top 10. Then J.J. Leto runs 11th, followed by Gianni Morbidelli, Christian Fittipaldi in 13th, Andre De Cesaris, whom we just saw pit and may have dropped back a little bit farther, Johnny Herbert, Eric Bernard, Michele Alboreto, Jean-Marc Gagnon, Yannick Dalmas, Pierluigi Martini, David Brabham, and Alessandro Zanardi. The car is still in the running.
That Ferrari, to me, still looks so unstable under braking now. That is very bumpy on that entrance to turn 1. Oh, squeezes down the inside, he hit them.
Oh, off the racetrack they go, and this is likely to be terminal as the Ferrari is in up to its axle at the rear. David Brabham re-signed with Simtech for next year.
We just mentioned how unstable it looked under braking from high speed, but Alesi had closed on David Brabham so fast. Here it is. Downhill right-hander. He realizes Brabham doesn't see him. Brabham takes to the apex. Alesi's already there. That's the contact. Both cars well buried in the gravel trap. Brabham on the curbing, but if he kept his engine going, he might get away with it. But Alesi will be furious again.
Oh, my, with luck that rivals Johnny Herbert. Christian Fittipaldi darts out from behind freshman Yannick Dalmas, but they've got race leader Damon Hill just behind him, and I thought we were going to see a replay.
The approach speed of these faster Formula One cars is so mighty compared to some of the slower cars. You simply have to look in your mirror and give them room. I mean, Alesi has to go down the inside. He is very aggressive. David Brabham was only in 21st position and probably realizes now that he needs to give these leading cars more room, or you will have accidents like that.
Well, Christian Fittipaldi can't seem to get out of the way of the race leader. Once again, the closing speed you just mentioned.
Coulthard doesn't have the speed that he had earlier on. Certainly doesn't seem to demonstrate it. I can't imagine that he's just controlling his pace. Sometimes when you make a pit stop, even though the tires are supposed to be the same, it just makes a subtle difference. And now you can see almost 2.5 seconds behind team leader Damon Hill. I'm not saying he wouldn't have been made to go back into second place as this race progresses, but Damon Hill in control at the moment, just what he wants.
Damon Hill with that new contract with Williams, getting a lot off of his mind as he comes into this race. Here's another look at what happened to Jean Alesi. No smoke off the tires of David Brabham. He simply did not see him coming.
And you can see Alesi locks up the front and he drives down over the curbing, hoping that David Brabham sees him. And at that stage, you're fully committed. You can't suddenly lose the speed. And there's the result.
David Coulthard pulls up on Christian Fittipaldi. Two offers from IndyCar teams that he would not name. Suggestions are one of them might be the Ganassi operation. Paul Tracy was watching this race this weekend. Roger Penske's driver will test the Benetton on Wednesday after Michael Schumacher finishes his laps.
David Coulthard does not seem to slide through traffic as well as some of the more experienced people. That's not a criticism. Remember, in 8 races, you don't get the confidence level in the people you're racing against because you haven't done it enough. So rather than put yourself into trouble, like he did in Hungary, remember that podium position, and with precious few laps to go, he lost control of the car. So he's quite prepared to sit here, lose a little bit of time, and keep his nose clean.
Fittipaldi has already made his second pit stop with barely 40 laps into the race, about 30 laps to go, so that does not bode well for him. David Coulthard comes around. The running order is Hill, Coulthard, Hakkinen, Barrichello, Verstappen, and Brundle. We'll be back with more of the Grand Prix of Portugal. Back in Portugal moments ago, this delicate moment.
Again, one of the Simtech cars in all sorts of trouble. So they're having an interesting day, but look at Coulthard. Now takes advantage of the traffic and drags himself all the way up behind team leader Damon Hill.
That was Jean-Marc Gagnon in that Simtech. David Brabham already out of the race after colliding with the third-place Ferrari of Jean Alesi. Pole sitter Gerhard Berger dropped out while leading the race when his gearbox let go, so both Ferraris are out of the race. And one of the Williams cars heads for the pits.
Now this will be interesting to see, can he get in, get out, and maybe take the lead of this race again.
This is on lap 46, which would mean he'll have to go 25 laps on his new rubber.
75 miles an hour is the pit speed limit. There's the fuel hose. Get her going. 8.7. Not spectacular. A lot better than the 10.2 that we saw earlier.
75-mile-an-hour speed limit in effect this weekend. Notice that fuel hose had one of those thermal wraps on it. I can't believe any Formula One team would go near their fueling rig with any kind of a change in light of what's been going on recently.
Now, your in and out laps are so important. When you make these pit stops, he's got to hold off Barrichello. If Barrichello gets by him, he may slow him down. He needs clear racetrack. There's Hakkinen and there's Barrichello.
And it is for position. If Barrichello can get around him, he would move up.
Fuel takes longer than anything else. You can see it. Accelerate up, press the button, stay at 75 miles an hour, drop the button, and away you go.
That was J.J. Leto pitting for Benetton. You ride now with Damon Hill into this long 180-degree right-hander, shifting up twice in the corner.
Here he goes. Here he goes. The whole race may hinge on this pit stop. Unless, of course, we have team orders, which we will have. 8.4, I believe. Those Coulthard. Look at the McLaren. Look at the helmets they have. Full fireproof uniform. Boy, that was good. 8.1. Now where's Coulthard? Where's our long shot here, director? Here's the engine misfire. He's got his hand on the button. Controls the speed.
Look for a picture that'll show us where David Coulthard is. Meanwhile, Mika Hakkinen pits his McLaren. There they are. Oiling the tire. Ooh, and a dastardly little snip there in the pit lane. There's Hill on the backside of the racetrack now.
In the sunshine here. So look at this squeeze job down the inside.
That's Yannick Dalmas in the LaRousse. His second appearance for the LaRousse team. Not an easy man to get around.
As the sunshine comes out here at Estoril, difficult on the long shots for the cameras to lose that glistening effect. Difficult to pick out the cars, but I would imagine Damon Hill must be leading. He is leading by 3.5. So David Coulthard did not have a good year. A lot of time. He will learn from that. He will realize the pit stop doesn't start when you stop the car in your pit stop, in your pit box. It actually starts when you decide to come off the racetrack and when you go up to full speed all the way around again. Look, he's caught in the traffic jam.
One of the Lotus cars heads for the pits.
Barrichello stretched the pit stop further than anybody last time, took the lead of the race, the first time he's ever led a Grand Prix race. Now he is one of the last of the leaders to pit again, because that was him. We just caught a glimpse of him behind the second Williams of David Coulthard as Johnny Herbert makes his second stop. Will he or won't he continue with Team Lotus? Will the name disappear? Tom Walkinshaw, along with Guy Edwards, took a run at buying this team in the last week. Peter Collins was so incensed by Guy Edwards' approach to trying to take over the team, he fired him. He arrived here at the racetrack, complete with his Team Lotus uniform and his pit pass. Peter Collins promptly stripped him of all team clothing and his FOCA pass, and Guy Edwards no longer works there.
You mentioned earlier that the bankruptcy court has ruled that the driver contracts are team assets. This weekend, Ron Dennis revealed that he approached Team Lotus and said he would pay off one of their substantial creditors, in the words we were told, if Lotus would release Johnny Herbert from his contract, which still has a couple of years to run.
J.J. Leto in making his second stop. It's clean. Leto, who has struggled this weekend, says he does not have enough confidence in this car to drive drive it at its potential. He was promised lots of testing by Benetton, and he's only completed 3 days. So not very happy with the situation, and this may be his last Grand Prix for Benetton.
Well, that would be the earlier Benetton pit stop was Verstappen. The helmets are very similar. Up the hill with lots of slower traffic ahead of him, race leader Damon Hill. There's Rubens Barrichello making a pit. We'll be back with more from Portugal in just a moment. Back in Estoril, Portugal, above the beautiful town of Cascais, which once sent explorers off to explore the new world. Bob Barcia, Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. A touch of the old world mixing with the new at the Grand Prix of Portugal. There is race leader Damon Hill. If he can hold it to the checkered flag, he will pick up 10 precious points on Formula One World Championship leader Michael Schumacher, who is not racing here today. And the result will be a 1-point gap for the World Driving Championship with 3 races to go. Notice all of the debris on that onboard camera.
Williams came here with steel inserts under that wooden plank underneath the car, trying to control the wear rate. They weren't allowed to use them. Uncle Ken Tyrrell says, I don't agree with them. Let's stay with wood. Would not sign off. Remember, it has to have a unanimous sign-off by every team before you can change any regulation technically. Uncle Ken would not sign it. Williams were not allowed to use it.
The Jabrock plank is cut from a board that costs about $300 a sheet at the 10-millimeter thickness. It's all made in Germany. It's a very, very advanced and dense form of plywood, formerly used by the teams to seal off the skirts in the ground effects era of Formula One. There you see the intervals behind the leader for the top 6 cars. All of those cars will earn championship points. 10 for Hill, 6 for Coulthard, or 10 for first, 6 for second, excuse me, gentlemen. 4 for third, 3, 2, and 1 for fourth, fifth, and sixth.
Anybody familiar with Indy cars will remember. Oh, here's another look at Damon Hill going down the inside. That's where a lazy crashed earlier on. That's a replay from our host broadcaster. But anybody familiar with IndyCar will remember those Jabrock wooden planks have been in use with IndyCar for probably the last 10 years. In fact, there's new rules being evoked for next year by Formula One. Again, familiar to IndyCar people. On the aerodynamic side, they will now add a load to aerodynamic components to make sure there is no deflection at speed. That's something IndyCar has been doing also for the last 10 years. Also, new rules states that the managers will now be held responsible for any junior employee. Whatever he may do, the management will now be deemed as having full knowledge. Of course, that was addressed after Benetton blamed a lower, let's say, junior employee for removing the filter from that fuel system. Electronic source codes next year will have to be given to the FIA before each event. And you have to give 120 liters of your fuel at the start of the season. That's the fuel you're allowed to use, and only that fuel for the rest of the year, unless you change it and get written permission from the FIA. Trying to close all these loopholes that seems to have jumped up after all the sudden regulation changes that has really put a black eye on this year's Formula One season.
And Philippe Adams in the Lotus pit. Another set of tires for the Belgian touring car race.
Young man trying to make his way, Philippe Adams. Another young American trying to make his way again in Europe in the Formula 3000 race. Elton Julian finished 14th yesterday. He was also first in class because he was the first Lola home. First in class, he was the first American home.
That was in the Formula 3000 race run around this circuit as a part of the Grand Prix show. We'll be back with more of today's Grand Prix race when we return to the Estoril circuit in Portugal in just a moment. Stay with us. Back at the Grand Prix of Portugal in Estoril, Bob Barcia, Derek Daly with you. The race leader is Damon Hill, followed by David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Rubens Barrichello, Jos Verstappen, and Martin Brundle. 2 McLaren Peugeots in the points position, as they were 2 weeks ago in Italy.
And again, you see Damon Hill locking up that left front. It's a very lightly loaded front suspension when you turn in there, because you begin to lean to the right-hand side. We have seen him lock that up almost all afternoon, as well as other cars also, as long as he doesn't flat spot it.
Andre de Cesaris in the Sauber is now out of the race. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, his teammate, already out, so the entire Sauber team is now out. Still very low attrition. 20 of the 26 cars that started the race are still shown. Here's a look once again at Andrea De Cesaris departing.
Same position on the racetrack, turn 3, as Alesi went off earlier. Under braking, you lose it. Look at the gravel that he drags onto that escape road. And De Cesaris took no further part as he stalled the engine, and they rolled it back off the racetrack down that escape road.
There goes Damon Hill. We tend to think of him as young Damon Hill. He is now 34, looking at his 35th birthday. And yet, despite being 8 years younger, his title rival, Michael Schumacher, has one more year than Damon Hill in Formula One. Hill says he spoke with the former 3-time world champion Jackie Stewart, who said, Damon, you have all the time in the world and you need all of it. You need at least 3 seasons to be ready to win a world championship. That makes it extra remarkable what a guy like David Coulthard has accomplished in his brief tenure in Formula One thus far. But much like an NFL quarterback, it takes a while to learn not only the mechanics and the techniques, but to adjust to travel and racetracks. And as you pointed out, Derek Daly, the guys you're racing against.
You have to have confidence in them. Now, if everything holds station as we get, an unusual view back from Mika Häkkinen's car, if everything holds station at the front, Williams will take over their prestigious Manufacturers' Championship lead and take it away from Benetton.
Interesting engine note from that Peugeot engine as well.
Last week at Nazareth, I got a chance to sit down and talk to Christian Fittipaldi about some of the rule changes and some of the dramatics of this year's Formula One season. He currently runs in 8th place. But he had some interesting observations about some of the changes going on presently in Formula One. He's not sure the direction that Formula One is going is right or wrong. The Grand Prix Drivers Association are not that sure, but he was even confused about some of the rule changes.
Maybe a lot of things have been quite strange in Formula One, and I think that in one way FIA has been trying to change a lot of things, or trying to settle down all the dust that was really flying up in the air, especially after what happened in the Imola race, and which made Formula One very confusing. So there were some attitudes that FIA took which were right, in my opinion, and there were some other attitudes which they took that they only did it for a lot of interests and maybe political reasons, because they had to do it at that stage. But maybe for the Formula One family it wasn't the best solution, but we had to do it for the sport, to save the Formula One sport. And I think Formula One for sure will be back to how it was before, but it's going to take a little bit of time for everything to settle down nice and easy.
Pierluigi Martini on the right, making way for the 3rd place car of Mika Häkkinen. I believe I may have confused Martini with Christian Fittipaldi a little earlier in the race, but it's the kind of weekend it's been in Portugal. Häkkinen runs in 3rd place. No real threat to David Coulthard in 2nd. They're about 23 seconds apart. Coulthard runs about 5 seconds behind his teammate, the race leader Damon Hill. About 3 seconds behind Häkkinen, however, is Rubens Barrichello, who may have an opportunity to close up as the laps begin to dwindle here in Estoril, Portugal.
Officially, the MP4/9. That means version 9 of the MP4 with the Evolution 2 Peugeot V10. They don't enjoy the luxury of being able to use higher revs in qualifying, so very often in race warm-ups, you get a truer picture of their particular speed against everybody else. And this morning in the warm-up, he was 4th. So Häkkinen hasn't won a Grand Prix yet, but he is definitely showing the pace, and this Peugeot McLaren package beginning to show the pace. It's not easy here. You don't suddenly become Grand Prix winners, but the reliability, and we saw spectacular blow-ups earlier on in the season, but the reliability now seems to be coming to this Peugeot V10.
There is Rubens Barrichello at the back of this line of cars, trying to close up on the Finn Mika Häkkinen. Hill, Coulthard, Häkkinen, Barrichello, Verstappen, and Brundle will be back to Portugal. J.J. Leto sitting in for Michael Schumacher. We've talked about curb heights and the billiard effect of this Armco derrick, and Leto got caught out here.
The end of his race and the end of his career with Benetton, possibly. What a way to sap another load of confidence out of J.J. Leto. Look for the end of it.
From the outside as he bounded across that gravel trap. Like all of the Finns, raised on the icy roads up in Scandinavia, consummate car control. But when you don't get many miles, and J.J. Leto hasn't, it's a tall order to ask you to sit in for a guy like Michael Schumacher. Here is another Finn, another car control expert, and a very spectacular driver, Mika Hakkinen. We saw puffs of blue smoke that looked like engine problems early in the race, but not since. And now Jos Verstappen has the Benetton on and off.
And that was the curve that caught Hakkinen out last year. Barrichello, you can see he's dropping back from Mika Hakkinen. He held it at 2 seconds for a good 25 lap stint. Now he's a long way back, so he may be going into survival mode with 8 laps to go.
I wonder if Barrichello got a glimpse in his mirrors of Verstappen going off and on, because Barrichello runs 4th, Verstappen 5th, as you see right there. So that allowed Barrichello to draw away just a bit from his most immediate threat.
One of the hot properties in Formula One is the designer of this particular car, Gary Anderson. Also hails from Ireland, given the money to design this new car, given a lot of confidence by Eddie Jordan. Look at this. That's Verstappen, completely misses the curve just about outside on the grass and manages to bring it back. I mentioned Gary Anderson. He has now signed a long-term contract to stay with that Jordan team for the years to come. Eddie Jordan delighted with that. Remember, they also have American designer Steve Nichols on that team.
How much can a Formula One designer, particularly a hot one, earn? We've heard about the mountains of money that the drivers can make. A top designer can pick up in excess of $1 million per year.
And Gary Anderson is not on anywhere near that amount of money, because Jordan's budget for this season, believe it or not, is $15 million, with 5 of that going to Brian Hart to develop that new V10 Hart engine.
It may sound like a lot of money, but when you take the prize purses and travel money and appearance money into consideration, Formula One is a series worth more than $42 million a year. On to the new section of track. Race leader Damon Hill begins to draw away from his teammate, looking for those all-important 10 points. Back in Portugal in the closing laps of the Grand Prix of Portugal, Damon Hill is your race leader, followed by David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen, Rubens Barrichello, Jos Verstappen, and Martin Brundle in the 6 points-paying positions. Behind Brundle, Christian Fittipaldi runs 7th, followed by Eddie Irvine, having a good race for the Jordan team in 8th, Olivier Panis 9th, and Gianni Morbidelli 10th for the footwork squad. Then Eric Bernard, Johnny Herbert, Pierluigi Martini, Michele Alboreto, Yannick Dalmas, Jean-Marc Gounon, Mark Blundell, and those 17 cars of the 26 that started are the only remaining runners in this race, but still very low attrition here in Portugal. Look at the front of David Coulthard's car and his helmet covered in oil and dirt.
What a weekend he has had. Equaled his best qualifying, 3rd here, 3rd in Hungary. Hopes to stay with the team in some fashion or form. Incidentally, Williams announced this week that they will enter the British Touring Car Championship next year. Again, obviously running Renault Lagunas. David Coulthard may find himself there. Look at this.
Right rear problems on the Simtech of Jean-Marc Gounon. He is just past the pit entrance. He'll have to go all the way around, and it's doubtful he'll ever make it. Here comes the race leader, Damon Hill. Gounon isn't going to be as maneuverable as he once was.
David Coulthard with less than 4 laps to go now. Gounon stays outside. David Coulthard needs to protect his 2nd place. We saw him make that critical mistake in Hungary, and he never made it to the podium, but he may here.
What a tough break for this young Simtech team. We've already seen David Brabham, who went out of the race in a tangle with Jean Alesi's 3rd place Ferrari. And now this. Empty seats here in Portugal, which is not great news. This has not been a terribly well-attended race over the years, but given the weather conditions and the chance of rain, seen lots of empty seats in the grandstand.
So the chase still on for Coulthard.
Now with Hakkinen out of the race, with Alesi out of the race, Mika Hakkinen, if he finishes in third place or better, we all know what happened in Monza 2 weeks ago when Coulthard ran out of gas in the last corner, allowing Hakkinen to reach the podium. Hakkinen would bump Jean Alesi from fourth in the Drivers' Championship points.
And David Coulthard is reeling in Damon Hill hand over fist. It was 5 seconds plus only 2 laps earlier. Now it's down to under 2 seconds, so he won't be allowed to pass him. But it is going to look good. We mentioned earlier, and quite a lot on these races, the safety features on racetracks and on race cars. It goes all the way down to racing drivers' apparel also. At Silverstone, there were 5 helmets taken from the drivers. Hill, Schumacher, Fittipaldi, Alesi, and Berger all had to give up their helmets for some testing to see that they conform to the FIA standards. There were helmets from Bell, Arai, Shoei, VF. I think that's how you pronounce it. They were all found to comply with the FIA standards, so the safety regulations and the safety checks go a long way further than just racetracks and racing cars.
That factoid has particular application this weekend when a story swept the pit lane from Italy that a payment on one of the late Ayrton Senna's life insurance policies was being held up while the insurance company investigated Senna's helmet, which apparently it felt might have been substandard. The former 3-time world champion, famous for using very lightweight helmets. But experts on the scene here in Portugal dismissed that. They say that Senna's helmet was in complete compliance.
There's a new Ayrton Senna Foundation also that was set up not too long ago, established in the United Kingdom, being run from there. Family trying to make sure that Senna's name and image for commercial purposes is handled properly, and that any financial benefit from the foundation goes to charities that Ayrton Senna already worked for and supported during his racing career.
2 laps remaining. It is a Williams 1-2. If they finish this way, David Coulthard will have his best finish ever. Of course, ever is a relative word when you've competed in as few races as he has. This is only his 8th, and yet he has scored 4 times coming into this weekend. His best finish of 4th place in Belgium.
And the faster he goes, the more chance he has to stay in that seat for a lot longer than he thinks.
Portuguese television replay of a spin in the uphill section of the new racetrack. That is Jean-Marc Gugnon out there on his new tires, and apparently cold ones.
We are getting some good MTV television time from the SimTech team. Unfortunately, the car is not always going in the right direction, but a team that has done a good job here on very, very little money.
Last lap for race leader Damon Hill. He can see those 10 points coming closer and closer. One more note on the SimTech team. Nick Worth and his crew may be working hard. In fact, their hospitality center director also works on the pit crew. They are that short-handed and closely budgeted. But they do have sponsorship for next year. They say they'll be back new and better than ever. And they can take heart from the tail of the Tolman team. Formula One, it took them 10 years to score points in Formula One. Tolman was eventually bought, and these days is known as Benetton.
Tom Walkinshaw, one of the directors of Benetton, the man largely responsible for having Paul Tracy here this weekend. Tom would like to see an American driver in Formula One, but doesn't believe that Michael Andretti got that fair chance. He thinks he can bring Tracy along in a different way. And Tracy himself has said he has always dreamed of competing in Formula One.
David Coulthard closes up, but we can pretty much remain assured that he will not pass his team leader. Second in the World Championship. He would blow all that goodwill he scored with the team by driving so well this weekend.
But now think of the World Championship. Now within 1 point. If Damon Hill gets another 200 yards.
On to the start-finish line. Could David Coulthard have won this race? The Williams team may know. Certainly David Coulthard knows. Probably Damon Hill knows as well. But it will go into the books as a victory. In the foreground, David Brown, his team engineer. engineer, celebrates as well. A 1-2 for Williams-Renault. Maximum points in the Constructors' Championship.
And Mika Hakkinen takes the final rostrum position, but we saw David Brown get a hug from another man that's familiar to American fans, Adrian Newey, who is largely responsible for the aerodynamic design of the Williams. And Barrichello signals to his team, yes, I am happy with my 4th place. More useful points for the Jordan Formula One team. Damon Hill delighted, but did you see David Coulthard's arm come out of the cockpit? He will feel as if he won this race. His first time to stand on the podium.
Congratulations to Damon Hill. It will be a neck-and-neck battle not only in the Drivers' Championship, but in the Constructors' Championship as well, as Williams-Renault picks up the maximum of 16 points and draws close to leaders Benetton. We'll be right back. Round, Damon Hill in the middle. On the left, David Coulthard. On the right, Mika Hakkinen. Here's a look at the final results. Hill picks up the victory, and with it closes within a point of Michael Schumacher for the World Championship. Best performance ever for Coulthard. Mika Hakkinen on the podium for the 2nd straight race. Rubens Barrichello, Jos Verstappen, and Martin Brundle making it 2 McLarens in the points for the 2nd straight event. 7 through 12, Eddie Irvine with a quiet but fine run for Jordan. Christian Fittipaldi as well for footwork. Olivier Panis for Ligier, followed by Gianni Morbidelli, Eric Bernard, and Johnny Herbert. A look at the drivers' points following today's event. As expected, Damon Hill pulls within 1 of Schumacher. Gerhard Berger scores none and remains in 3rd spot, but Mika Hakkinen moves past Jean Alesi for 4th place in the championship. Over on the Constructors' side, there has been a change. By scoring maximum points, Williams-Renault, the 2-time defending champion, move around former leaders Benetton Ford by just 2 points. Another example of how much Michael Schumacher can mean to a race team. All in all, an interesting race. Lots of lead changes. Your final thoughts, Derek Daly?
Well, with 3 more races to go, we don't know what's going to happen, but Patrick Head himself told me on Wednesday, whoever wins will not have the prestige of years past.
Checkered flag coverage of today's race will be coming your way at the time and date on your screen. Watch for that. And our next stop in the Formula One World Championship will be the Grand Prix of Europe from Jerez. Your way at 8:50 rather than 7.